welcome. You're watching Happiest Health. I'm Revati. A lot of us go about doing our day to day activities with a wearable device that tracks our heart rate, sugar levels, oxygen levels, and also sleep. Not just how long you've slept, but also how well you have slept. We'll discuss that and more with Jesse Cook, who joins us today. He's a sleep scientist, researcher, and blogger. He's a clinical psychology PhD student from the University of Wisconsin and has published multiple papers on these topics. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Jesse, you've been researching on the shortcomings and capabilities of commercially available wearable devices that track sleep. Should we take this data seriously? Should we make changes to our sleeping patterns based on this data? What is your finding?
The reality is they're not purposed, most of them, to be sleep health interventions. And we have to keep that in mind. My research has showcased kind of their capabilities at capturing sleep duration, estimating it relative to our gold standard polysomnography, and also bedtimes and rise times. But they start to lose ability when it comes to detecting wakes. And they're also vulnerable to kind of inaccurate estimations of the type of sleep, the stages of sleep. So if your device is saying you got this much REM sleep or deep sleep, take that with a grain of salt. And so they're getting better at how they're estimating these things. But more times than not, they shouldn't be viewed as a tool to help you sleep better.
What are the top three warning signs that people need to take note of?
Yeah, number one is certainly falling asleep spontaneously, especially when operating a vehicle. Excessive daytime sleepiness affects upwards of 33% of the population. Emotional regulatory issues are probably a secondary sign because sleep and mental health share an intimate bidirectional relationship. And then I think somebody who continually is getting sick or injured repetitively, that to me would indicate that their sleep health is probably pretty poor and could be an area that we can modify to reduce their risk for these illnesses and injuries that are not just persistent but consistent.
Well, Jesse, some people say they can manage with 4 to 5 hours of sleep. They can catch up on lost sleep sometime later. How do you respond to that?
So the National Sleep Foundation recommends for young, healthy adults somewhere between 7 to 9 hours of total sleep time across a 24-hour window. But it's really important to normalize that wake occurs during sleep. So Jesse operates best when he gets about 7.5 hours of total sleep time. So when thinking about the fact that I need to account for some of this wake, that means I need an 8-hour window of opportunity to get 7.5 hours of total sleep time. When your head hits the pillow, you fall asleep immediately and you don't wake up at all. That's usually a sign of being chronically sleep deprived or having some sort of organic sleep disorder like a hypersomnia. If you're sleeping only 4 to 5 hours a night, you may not show the detrimental effects until you're 50, 60, 70 years old, but it will catch up to you.
Jesse, you've researched on sleep for over a decade now. Could you leave us with 5 tips for sleep hygiene?
A good night of sleep begins when you first wake up in the morning. What we can really do to help our sleep at night is to move the body and to get sunlight. So I love to go for a long walk or a run, things like that, even when it's cloudy outside, because that upregulates our circadian rhythm and gets us set up for success at night because the rhythm's going to help us sleep better at night. I'd also recommend stopping caffeine. We want to really stop at a minimum 8 hours before our sleep window. So that's number two. Number three is similar, is to be very careful around kind of the early afternoon. We have a natural kind of dip in our energy. Our circadian rhythm changes at that point, stops producing as much cortisol. So we're vulnerable to napping at that time. If you nap for too long, you start to leave yourself very vulnerable to having sleep problems at night. I also want to say at that same time, so that would be number three, sometimes when our head hits the pillow, we're flooded with worries. So building in a constructive worry period, notice the word constructive, in the middle of your day, where you can start to plan on things you may be flooded with at night can really help protect from that happening and quiet the brain during those periods. And lastly, building in a protected period to wind down, to land your plane, is critically important. And to build that in with sleep behaviors or sleep promoting behaviors like listening to calm music, stretching, meditating, yoga, praying, spirituality, and create a scenario where sleep is likely to find you favorably.
All right, a good night's sleep begins the moment you wake up. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this interview and sums up all the other points that you've talked about. Thank you so much, Jesse, for taking the time out and giving your valuable inputs. Hope to collaborate with you again in the future. Thank you.
My pleasure. And thank you to you and Happiest Health as well for bringing all this attention to sleep. Thank you, truly.
If you found this interview informative, like the video, share it in your circles, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Click the bell icon to be notified every time we upload new content. Thanks for watching.